Hi guys, we're back here with the sixth episode of Jewish Agnostics. Here we have Rabbi Zalman at Albert Einstein Medical School University. He is the club advisor of the Chabad Club. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a nice guy, I think.
So far.
Yeah, no, I was very lucky to be raised in a Chabad school, very close to Crown Heights, where Albert Rebbe just spent so much time with teaching and also giving guidance as far as being involved in the community. So very early on, got a chance to really be involved in the community and have meaningful conversations with people and be able to hear all kinds of questions and stuff. And it really led directly to being able to be here for the students and, all kinds of stuff that people are going through. I mean, medical students get face-to-face with people that have tough questions. They themselves have very tough questions. And so I thank God I've been able to help out a little bit, but I think I've grown much more than I've helped anyone else grow in my time here. I have to say thank God. When I was really young, part of my upbringing was really appreciate that life is here to be for others, including family. And I have to say, even though you're not going to necessarily see them here in the background, but it would be remiss if I did not include, you see some little pictures there, a little on top there. That I think the highlight of my life is the fact that, thank God, I am lucky to be the dad of a bunch of adorable and incredible girls and boys. So.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. I think, in fact, you're the first rabbi to, really be intertwined with the college and much more, a medical college where, you have these huge concepts and pillars such as medicine and religion, which I think really leads us to the first question that we'd like to ask. So, as a rabbi representing the School of Medicine and Secular Studies, how do you view science's relationship and/or clash, with religion?
So it's an amazing question, but if we could just take a step back for a second, I feel like it'd be nice. I want to just give a couple introductions so that when we're talking, kind of, it would be more of a we'll be on the same page, so to speak, because we are coming from somewhat different angles. So first of all, I want to say a blessing. I have some coffee right now. So Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shachar li'amari and l'chaim. And then also, just by way of introduction, so I did send a little charity box, and Stephen, if you have it there. I'm not going to make any suggestions, but if you decide you want to begin your classes from now on this way, I was lucky, like I said, to spend time with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and every week the Rebbe would spend, hours meeting thousands of people, and with every interaction, the Rebbe would give $1 to give to charity. And I think the Rebbe may have mentioned this. I don't remember the source, but my understanding was that whenever people are involved in anything, so let's say we're interacting philosophically, theologically, inspirationally, whatever we're doing, because God created a physical world, we should always make sure, pay attention to the fact that our discussion doesn't stay in speech or thought or whatever, but we actually have a tangible change and we help somebody. Somebody makes and $1 is a tangible amount, actually any coin. So if you have so I'm going to ask both of you guys, if you have $1 bill, and actually anybody in the audience, the pushka that I sent you, the charity box I sent you, doesn't have any name on it. Pick any charity, although I am going to make a plug for anybody that's on a campus. If you have a Chabad house there and you want to put that aside, and then when you get $10 or whatever it is, you Venmo the rabbi and you take back the cash and start all over again. But write whatever it is. If you have a needy person in the neighborhood, just put that there, and then we'll start off by giving $1 to help. And so this is going to be for the students at Albert Einstein Medical College of Medicine. There'll be one less hungry student. Number one. Now, I did send a second $1 bill. Now, if you guys have a second, we're going to put that one aside, and this is a challenge, okay? So here, you're going to be asking a bunch of questions. I'm going to do my best to answer them. Here's the challenge, okay? I'm not going to try to prove anything, and I don't expect to change anybody. But we just gave $1 to charity. Imagine you clean your room, and you put everything in the right places. You've probably never done that before, right? Except for that's a fake background, correct? But and everything looks great, right? And you feel so good about yourself. Now compare that to a person visiting their grandma in the hospital. Tough, emotional, and you walk in, and it's a mess. There's like a big old garbage and like used food wrappers and stuff on the table right in front of her and everything. And you feel like, oh my goodness, grandma's so stressed. Okay, so you clean up the table, and you find like a little picture of her grandchildren, obviously yourself, right? And you put that on the leg so she can see it. plug in her cell phone charger, right? And everything looks clean. She feels better. Everything's organized. She sees her family. You did the exact same thing you did before, but it's very different because this time you made her feel at home. You made her feel healthy, comfortable, right? So my goal is like this. At the end of this session, let's give the other dollar, okay? If I do this right, when we give that dollar, we're not going to feel that, oh, I did something good, or I made the world organized. You're going to feel that there's a creator that created the world and is stressed by the chaos in the world, created chaos with the potential for us to clean it up. And when we give that dollar, if we feel that we're doing something that's meaningful and that the creator makes the creator happy, comfortable, healthy, more at home, then we're succeeded. Okay, so we'll put that dollar aside. And now, your question was, I'm a rabbi at a medical school and really high level of science, and people that really are living it and they're studying it. And then at the same time, I'm here as a religious rabbi, and the entire background of that is the fact that the Torah's message is that there's a creator and that there's God's, all the right and wrong of the Torah. So do I see a clash? So I will be honest with you. I feel that the possibility of a clash is coming from a misunderstanding of what the conversation is about. Imagine two people walk into a workshop, right? You're walking into the workshop, you know that your grandpa, your dad, your brother ordered a very specific, thing to be made. The master craftsman's walking in, and you're here to say, I'm going to describe what needs to be made now. He's like, I don't know you. You didn't make the order. I don't know what you're talking about. And you're like, no, I know. My brother couldn't make it, but I have the message. I know what's supposed to be. He's like, listen. And you're like, well, it's supposed to be a desk with a clock. And he's like, I'm looking at the material here, and it's not a desk, it's not a clock, it's not nothing. He's the expert. He starts looking and measuring analyzing every little thing. And now his expertise is true. He really is very good at his job, but he doesn't know what you know. You have the exact picture of what's supposed to be, but you don't know the material. You're both describing the exact same thing from a different angle. And what's going to happen is that the better that you get at articulating what it is you're supposed to describe, and the more closer he gets to seeing the full picture, you'll start getting better, closer and closer. And the same thing also, science, when it's humbly approaching the world, saying, what is it here for? What makes people happy or sad? Why is the world, how does the world come about? What's going on? And the better that those that are here with a message. Now remember, the world is created, there's a purpose. That purpose is articulated through the Torah, through God's plan. And God had a method to be able to help humans to be able to understand what we're here for. We know what the world is supposed to look like. And we start articulating that when scientists and people with the message come together and we communicate better. And I was raised at the footsteps of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, studying in Chabad, incredibly analytical to every little nuance of what the Torah is teaching and the different messages and the underlying inspiration behind all these laws and everything. And now I'm here studying people that are analyzing research both in basic sciences and in biology and in psychology, psychiatry, and surgeries, whatever, all that stuff. I get to be able to see how the two are completely intertwined, and they're not two conversations. It's one conversation from two different angles.
So it's like different variations of that one ultimate objective truth that we're all trying to go for.
Yeah, and everyone is, we're the truth will be found everywhere. Wherever you go, anybody that looks and is humble and honest and analytical will see the truth. But sometimes, when truth is hidden, it takes a bit of a step back to be able to see it more clearly.
Could you provide like a concrete example of where they're intertwined, just to for us to ramify off of, kind of attach different branches to that concept you're describing?
I have to say in medicine, it just comes up constantly, but in tiny little things. I feel, probably the best example of where you see the science and religion kind of just on a bullet train that's directly parallel is, I use this sometimes when I discuss this concept. Imagine a scientist is trying to explain to everybody, where COVID came from, and he has this little lab, and he doesn't really speak the language, and everything, and he's not very articulate, but he's saying that it came from an ostrich egg. And everyone's like, wait, and he agrees it came, and it was not just a regular ostrich, it was a blue ostrich egg. And everyone's like, no, it's impossible. There's no, we know where it came from, and we know what kind of live animals are sold there, and we know that and there's no ostriches there, and ostriches don't make blue eggs. And then, science goes and they start, going and doing more forensic research, and finally, they get to patient zero after, go through all the DNA of every little, possibly everyone that was, had any disease, and they find a picture of these people, and I use the example of a blue ostrich egg to find the most ridiculous possible thing, and it was like, and imagine they like, oh my goodness, here are these billionaires celebrating a birthday party with an imported ostrich, and it has a blue ostrich egg, and that's patient zero. Like, if you would look at that, I mean, this person was not coming to this determination by forensic data or by traveling or by finding pictures. He was looking at his lab. He's looking at his, at the DNA that he was pulling apart, and he's looking at a computer. And if the two of them match, you're like, oh my goodness. So the example I'm giving is not as fantastic as a blue ostrich egg. It's much crazier. For thousands of years, Judaism said not that God created the world 5,783 years ago. Yes, that was the first moment of existence. That is a basic belief in Judaism. But that's not what Judaism says. Judaism says that God, the speaking into existence, is a constant, to the point that when you spell out the articulation of what that means, that the world is created every second. We actually use that in our prayers every day. So Jews around the world, every day we say, God, you recreate the world every second, which when it's translated every moment, the world is recreated. And we say God's name, we say this. Now imagine 200 years ago, you're looking at a house, you're looking at a rock, and you say, you know what, God created it now, and now God created it again. It is something that is so fantastic and so out of logic. It's almost like hard to say that in sane company. Mm-hmm. But today, science will tell you that if you took the energy out of the world currently, there will be nothing to sweep up. Every single iota, everything, every rock is now only there because there is a energy that's spinning, giving it its mass. If you punch a rock and you hurt your hand, it's because not yesterday there was a rock there, but because right now it's being created. So that concept, like as you study science and as you study the Torah, which by the way, that prayer that everyone says every day, and we say that in our prayers constantly, and we say God's name, we say that it's a blessing. It takes a lot of study to understand that what that means is that God is actually articulating creation every second. When we read Genesis, where it says God spoke the world into existence, it takes a lot of analysis to realize that that's not something that happened in history, but it's a constant. That's another verse which says that God's words are constantly in the heavens, meaning they're constantly creating. That takes a lot of study. So the studying of Judaism takes a lot of analysis. Studying science takes a lot of analysis. When you put them together, you're looking at the same thing.
I see. So like with that blue ostrich example, like I don't really understand. How does that relate to how does that show the congruence of that?
The ostrich egg example was what I'm saying is someone was saying something that made no sense. Everyone's like, wait, that makes no sense. No, stop speaking like that. You're speaking gibberish. And then you found that to be true, you would say that this guy's science is actually amazing. If you imagine if you found that what he said that everyone was laughing at is true because of forensic study. So the same thing too. Judaism for thousands of years was saying the world is being created every second, and now Einstein said the world is being created every second. They came from different angles, but they discovered something, and the thing is that what they discovered was, to believe that the world is recreated, you need to have a lot of ideological faith.
So essentially even though science might be approaching from this direction and religion from this direction, at the end of the day they're angled to the same vertex.
They're simply said, science is studying the world. Religion is describing the world. They're describing the same thing. They're not, and when you study them properly, you will see the same thing. They'll both be the same thing. You asked me for an example, so it was somewhat of a colorful example, I guess.
Yeah, the blue one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
you-
like, our next question
Mhm.
by Abram Jerrard. Again, I apologize if I say these names incorrectly throughout the
Okay.
questions. But if God knows that everything is going to happen, controls everything, and leaves us to decide on our free will, or something along those lines, why should I pray or pay any attention to Him? If it is only for my benefit and I feel no benefit whatsoever, what stops me from stopping? That's an exact quote from Abram.
Okay. So that's an amazing question, and so let me ask you a question. Imagine you just had a $2 billion lottery, right? You had it in Florida. Was one of the state's memberships, right? One of the state members.
Yeah, there was something like that. Really huge lottery.
When I had $1 billion, right?
Love them.
Imagine you won the lottery, correct? It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
$2 billion. It could be $20 million, right? Cheap, like a really small prize, right? You would think to yourself, "Oh my goodness, I could have any love I want. Everybody would be amazing, right?" On the flip side, you might say the opposite. You actually might never have the validity to know that anybody that says they love you loves you. Every single time someone comes and says, "You look great, you're so smart, I have a question for you," you'll always be thinking, is it me or is it my money? Right? So if we think of how our existence here, the fact that we're here. So let's take a step back. I had actually intended to do this kind of as an introduction, but I think it's a good way to kind of explain this question. Because to answer his question about why we're doing things for God, let's understand where we are and how we have our individuality, how we have choice, all that kind of stuff. If we stopped existing, would we be nothing, or would we be everything? It sounds like a weird, like psychobabble, right? I'm just asking.
If we stopped existing, would we be nothing or everything? Well, I mean, if we mean existing by we're not stopping to exist by we're dead, then I mean you could make the argument our consciousness is dead, but
existence would cease. Would there be nothing or everything?
Because nothing by our definition.
Okay. And your answer is the intuitive answer. In fact, that is the premise of not just science, but also most religious perspective. Most people, when we think of the world, we think that the world was created. It is now something, right? Before it was created, there was nothing. Now, Judaism answers that question in the exact reverse. And not only that, but what's fascinating is once you hear this, you're not going to be able to unhear it. In fact, I'm not teaching you anything new. You're going to see how everything you learn in science really fits this description, this perspective, and you can look at it in other areas of life and you'll see how it plays itself out. So, let's say, don't think of pink elephants, okay? You just thought of pink elephants, right? Okay, where were those pink elephants a second ago? You didn't just draw them. They were in your head. The elephants you thought of, they were in your head. They were not nothing. They were just coexisting with other things. So, for example, think of the Eiffel Tower. It's a 1,000-foot steel monolith that you had in your head that was invisible, not because it wasn't there, but because every single possible thought, feeling, emotion, everything going on in your head, they're blank. Not because they're not inside of you, but because they are coexisting. Now, if I actually decided to make it real, if I wanted to take things that are inside of me and make it happen, so I might, for example, be like, okay, I'm hungry or I'm bored, and then I'll think in my head, do I want food or do I want a snack? Then I might think, do I want something spicy or do I want something sweet? Then I might think, okay, hey, let me call a friend. Hey, you want to go out for dinner? And then we'll go out and then we'll actually have a physical piece of meat in front of us. What we've done is we haven't grown things. We've made things smaller. Before I even thought if I was hungry, that hunger was together with every other feeling I have. Now I think hunger. Then I start to think, okay, do I want something sweet or spicy? I'm making it smaller. Then when I speak, I articulate it. It's just a few words. To the point that when I actually have a piece of meat in front of me, only I could eat it or my friend could eat it, but we can't both eat it. We've made it so small that it becomes a tiny little experience. When Einstein says the world begins to exist, how does it come into existence? It comes into existence by small things, like time. Time is a minute speck that will never step on the toes of another second. It's now and not now, and it's now and not now. Space is dividing everything into tiny little area. We all have different opinions. Mathematics are different ideas that are completely, each one is small, articulated. So if we take away the division, the smallness, the contraction, the little, experiences of life, what we have is they're all joined together. There is a reality that is not real because it's compared to something else or on top of something or before something or after something, or a joke that's your joke or my joke. If you take away all those divisions, the world stops to exist because, like when we're not thinking, it's there, it's real. So when we think of creation, we don't think that God built a world. Everything exists. God went and thought and then spoke, and now the physical world in its minutia brings us into existence. So when every moment of time, every thought, every word is a tremendously potent articulation by the Creator. It's phenomenal of how specific God has to think for something to exist. So that's very inspiring. Each of us have a different idea, an ideology. Each of us have a different mission, a different perspective on the world. We're all that way. We're all different from each other. We're all in a different place or time. We all feel different. We all have a different purpose because of how specific God makes us. That means our specificity is phenomenal. But if I live only in the way I see the world and I ignore everyone else's, I'm living in the tiniest little prison that I can live. Right? So I'm stuck here. I only see my hunger as important. I only see my opinions as important. God created those opinions, specific, different from everyone else's. Now they exist. I could touch them. It's amazing. But if I live and I only see those, this is incredibly tiny. So now what happens? God made something so specific, so small, that's me. Now we're going back to that question. God, I'm here. Now, do I know that I'm created? I don't know I'm created. I don't feel it. Why? Because in that process of going from our hunger to that piece of meat on the table, God, through God's incredible power, was able to make us where I can't even see the fact of where I'm coming from. Why? So this goes back to that lottery question. Because right now, after God made me, and God gave me $1, I have the ability to look at the Creator and say, you made a chaotic world. You made a divided world. I'm going to destroy that. I'm going to get rid of the division. I know the truth. I look and I know that my hunger is only created to be separate from that person. I'm going to break the division by giving $1 to that person, and I'm going to bring the world back to the unity that it should have. So now, what's happening here? What's happening is, whose pleasure is this? Is it when I take $1, I give it to somebody else? Is it my pleasure or is it the Creator's pleasure? The Creator, not a billionaire. A billionaire is nothing compared to the Creator. The Creator, who's all-powerful, cannot have the validity of someone saying, I love you, except for these little creations, that's you and me, us, that God created, gave us separators, made us not even realize that we're created. And now, when I give someone $1, the Creator's like, oh my goodness, that person doesn't know they're created. I'm validated. They break through I made them divided. They're really one. He's breaking through the divisions. He's giving his money. He's giving his time. He's smiling at somebody. He's spending time with somebody else. He's helping someone in the hospital. That's amazing. So whose pleasure is it? It's God's pleasure. But there's a whole different level of pleasure. My niece is really into singing, and her dream came true one time. She was in Manhattan, and Celine Dion walked out of a theater into her limousine. My niece walked over to the limousine and started belting out one of her favorite songs. And Celine Dion stopped, told the limousine driver to stop, roll down her window, and listen to the song. I don't remember the comment that she made. My niece is going to kill me. I don't remember the comment that she said. But now, imagine the pleasure of knowing that your idol stopped the car to listen to you. It's God's pleasure. It's God's validity, God's fantasy. When God created a separate world, and now we break through that and we help other people. But it's our dream. It's beyond the fantasy that when we do that, we're validating the Creator. We give the Creator his fantasy.
Wait, so in his infinite power and omniscience and all that, the one thing he cannot do is give himself the validity like that we can give ourselves and others? Or
So with God's, well, I wouldn't say he can't, because we are that. We're not.
Like
yes, we are that part of it. In other words, this is the greatest omniscient, whatever the word would be. This is the greatest power and potency that the Creator has, is that the Creator could make us validate it, can make us with his separate ability to validate it. Our separation is the Creator's greatest power.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we do it,
so is God like benefiting it at all, or is it just like the person who benefits from that acknowledgement? And like, if that's the case, like, I think what Mr. Jerrard is saying is like maybe, for example, your niece, if they stop the car, or like a seeming idol that maybe not everyone shares, like, for example,
right.
I don't know, Rihanna, because she's doing the Super Bowl. Like, personally, if I saw her in the streets, I wouldn't make an attempt to say hi. And if she stopped her car to listen to me, I could care less.
Right.
And with that said, like, what if other people feel that way about God? And like, what are your just thoughts on that? Like knowing that, like, it's not the idol for everyone. He's not that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why, in this case, when we talk about God, there's two different words that people throw around equally, and they're not the same thing. There's God and there's the Creator, right? God is a word we use for, like, the highest level of authority, and that could be, if I don't believe in anything higher than the country, or I don't believe in anything higher than the policeman, I don't believe in anything higher than myself, that's God for me. When we talk about the Creator, it's not, we're not describing something that's coming to tell me what to do. We're describing that, if I look in the mirror and I ask myself, where am I coming from? Now, the scientific description of existence is that there is energy that's spinning really quickly, and that's allowing mass to take shape. The psychological example of that the Torah gives hundreds of years before Einstein, 150 years before Einstein said it, one of the ways it's articulated is, it's articulated in the Talmud, is, over 1600 years before he said it, is that when you love something, your muscles tense up. Right? You sit up straight, your muscles tense up. God's love of God's fantasy is what makes the world exist. So in other words, what am I if I actually ask myself, why am I existing? Because there is a being that is fantasizing the possibility of me to be here and to make these choices. Now, I obviously could kind of ignore that. And that is always a possibility. But if we're actually looking honestly, then it's important to realize that my ability to ignore the underlying, true, like the hierarchy of value that's available to me. In other words, I could say I want cookies, I could say I want music, I could say I want academia, and maybe that really is a choice. What if I want food rather than academia? Even though there really is a hierarchy, there's an absolute objective hierarchy there, but we can't. But let's say, for example, if there's somebody dying on the street in front of me, and I'm like, listen, I'm in the middle of a sandwich. I paid a lot of money for the sandwich. I want to eat the sandwich. Then we're not. This is not a. It's not a hierarchy of choice. The potential to throw the sandwich aside and do CPR is, or just even call 911. It's two different realm. It's two different opportunities that I have, and for me to be, and trust me, we all have within us the ability to ignore this potential that we have, that I could do CPR right now, I'm eating a sandwich. We do it all the time. We ignore those two choices all the time. So when we talk about the Creator giving us potential to participate in what the world is here for, and it's not about helping somebody else. This is not about Celine Dion or Rihanna or whatever. I think that was an example just because the day that was in the Tanya lesson was the day that happened to her. So I used that in our Tanya video. But it really what it is being able to take a step back and saying, what makes me, why am I here, and what will fulfill my being here, and what different experiences can I have, and which of them would be, we can actually maybe, if you want, if you want to continue on this question, I'm happy to go take another angle on that. Do you feel like should we pursue that a little more?
I understand the CPR example. I don't know if that necessarily translates to this question. I think
well, it's I think it has to do with personal pleasure versus this higher ordeal, this moral imperative, I would say.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily objective, because I don't necessarily feel like the same. But with that said, I do feel strain from both angles, and I can say that it's not objective. It's not as objective as choosing a sandwich or CPR. I think it's quite complicated, and a lot of it is within yourself. It's within yourself whether you can reach in and believe that higher power, or I'm not going to say succumb because it's just a personal preference, and it's totally valid to just choose external beliefs. It doesn't even need to be a belief system. Clearly, he's unclear because he's asking a question. But I don't think it's clear cut, and I don't think necessarily.
I think that there's a little bit of a crossover here. I think that we're trying to tackle two different things at the same time. The question was, when I pray, is it God's pleasure or is it my pleasure? Or, why should I do that, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's another question, which is, do I believe that God is the idol? Is God my idol? I think that's the problem there. If there really is, see, if I do believe that there is a creator, see that I believe that we're taking two different stages and we're trying to blend them together. And perhaps that's my fault. Maybe the way that I answered it kind of blended all.
Yeah, I get the question was just I'm interpreting it personally as for tefillah, he's heard that tefillah is used to benefit the people actually praying. It doesn't benefit God, which is what I've learned personally, too. And if he doesn't feel a benefit from it, why should he continue?
Right. So then my answer to that. So then the premise of the question is that there is a God. Okay? And his understanding was that the person is benefiting, not God. So I would like to redirect that a little bit, and I would like to say that one of the explanations for creation is that God wants to hear our prayers.
So
it's
maybe it's not necessarily solely individual benefit.
Not only is it not, but the entire existence could be explained utilizing this particular source that I'm referencing now. The entire source of existence could be looked at as a text message from the Creator to us saying, would you like to have lunch? And waiting for the response, right? Now, have you ever done that? You ever texted somebody, do you want to hang out? And then your entire body is tense and you're like, what's the answer going to be? That could be a description of God's creation. And every prayer that we send saying, sure, God, every prayer we're doing is basically validating God's dream and saying, God, you're brilliant. When I really want to meet you, God. Oh my goodness, God, I really want to see you. That's our prayer, validating all of existence. So I don't believe the question was saying, is there a God? The question, or who the idol God is, or what's the idol? The question is, when I pray, does it mean something to the Creator? And based on, there are many different descriptions of the Torah, from the Torah about prayer, and sometimes you'll teach somebody about one little point. So when you learn that prayer is for yourself, there is something about that. Prayer should be personal. But that is not all of what prayer is. That personal prayer that you have is God's dream that when you go to sleep at night, you pause for a second, you say, God, I had a tough day. Please be with me tomorrow. And that's God's fantasy. That's why God made the world. God wants to hear, I love you. God wants to hear, I hate you. Seriously, I'm not joking. God wants to hear, I hate you, God. You know why? Because when you're meaningful to somebody and they're having a bad day and they say, I hate you, that means that they recognize your part in their life. You're valid. If someone's having a bad day and they don't say, I hate you, you're meaningless. God wants to be meaningful. God wants to be valid. So God wants to hear us say, please give me money. God wants us to say, please give me a good day. Please, God, let's spend time. So I think that's the answer to his question. And we went a lot of circles to get there.
Yeah, that was a very interesting answer. Like, I know for one, I didn't really think about it that way. I thought it more so we had like a moral obligation to him, and that's why. But I guess now moving on to almost the opposite side of the coin. Why do you think others don't believe in God? And do you think atheism will continue to rise in support? And this is from, again, forgive me if I say this wrong, Gertie Cleopas.
So I mentioned before that there's two completely different words, God and the Creator, right? And it's funny, but I mentioned before, Celine Dion, that as soon as I mention things, you could right away, throw the whole conversation out if you don't agree with that one thing. But I'll throw out another because it was a conversation that I saw. Someone sent me this clip with a similar question. It was like, Ricky Gervais or something like that. He was with an interview and he's like, there are 3,000 gods, or 30,000 gods out there, and you only believe in 3 of them. He says, I believe in 3 less than you. Make sense? You heard that thing? It was a brilliant...
Yeah, no, because he's a very outspoken atheist. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what he... Either way, for all I know, this guy could be arrested for every moral crime. I don't know him from Adam. So please, I should not use names of people that I don't know. But this was a clip that it was so brilliant, like the way it was worded. And the problem is that it's completely ignorant and the opposite of the reality. And the reason is like this. God is not synonymous with the Creator. God simply means the highest level of authority. When people say God tells people to kill, God makes wars, it's totally true. What do I mean? To kill is the most extreme thing we could think of morally, like reprehensible. And the pinnacle of morality, wherever that is for you, let's call that God. Okay? So let's say he was saying there's 3,000 gods out there, right? And I actually meant to research this once, and I never really did, but I heard someone told me, and it came on authority. I don't really have too much faith in anything that happened more than 50 years ago. This happened about a few hundred years ago. But there is a very accepted historical fact that in Peru, or South America somewhere, they were inaugurating a temple, and they made 80,000 human sacrifices.
Wow.
Okay, that is one of those 3,000 gods that they believed in, and he asked them to make sacrifices. The 80,000 human sacrifices to inaugurate a temple not very far from where we live. We can drive there. And it wasn't all that long ago. Not talking about the ancient history, talking about a few hundred years ago. And that sounds horrible. And then you think of the different wars. I mean, the Christians have burned Jews alive, and then you think about even recently there were some, very, very fundamental people in the name of Islam that went and murdered Americans and did terrorism. And you think of these things, okay, gods are causing war, and atheism is taking away the God. That's not true. Because God is simply the pinnacle of our belief. So if this person believes in 3,000 gods, a god of rain, and a god of sun, so at least he believes that he has to act properly for rain to come. He has to act properly for sun. There's some people he's going to kill, some people he can't kill. Get rid of that God. You haven't gotten rid of it. It's like this chef. He said, all the top bowls in the restaurant are dusty, so he has piles of bowls. The top ones are getting dusty. Let's take off a top bowl. That doesn't help. Now you have more bowls that are dusty. If you take all of them flat and you say there's no top bowl, all the bowls will be dusty. Saying I don't believe in God is not saying I don't believe in something higher than me. You're saying there's nothing higher than me. So if you go back very recently to 3 gods, I don't want to say his name, but it starts with Adolf and ends with Hitler. Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao. I call them gods because there was nothing higher than them.
Yeah.
They were the state. Yeah.
So by the simple logical definition of what a god is, they killed over 100 million people in a matter of...
You say the same thing like with the Uyghur genocide ongoing right now in China.
No, but going farther than that.
No, yeah.
I mean, what did
Cold War era? Yeah.
Sorry?
What did Louis the Sun King say? Oh, sorry.
So one second. So now, by the way, that's not entirely... You don't have to go that far, because right this year in the United States, there is a Holocaust of godless murder. There are tens of thousands of people being murdered every year by people who are God. Meaning, not every atheist, obviously, is, God forbid, going to be a murderer or is going to be a bad person. Not at all. But every person that kills somebody else, by definition, by the way that I'm defining it, in other words, is an atheist. They don't have a God telling them not to kill. And so there are many gods this year that said, my girlfriend can't be with somebody else, and if she is, I'm going to take my kids into the car, and I'm going to drive off a bridge, and we'll all be dead. And these are not even newsworthy anymore. These stories, people burning down their house with their own kid. So the belief that God is something that tells me not to kill. Now, unfortunately, idolatry will tell me idolatry is the faith in a God that is divided, is measurable, and therefore people outside that measurement will be killed. So the pagan 80,000 sacrifices is a Holocaust. Going back, like we said before, the generation before us, a couple generations before us, that was multiple Holocausts. But if you go back, there were Christian wars, there were Muslim wars, because there is a certain aspect of idolatry when our view of God, when we say there's one God, and we mean my God, not your God, that's idolatry. My God, not your God, that's idolatry. What do we mean when we say one God? What we mean is, remember before I said if we didn't exist, would we be nothing or would be everything?
Yeah.
The real belief is that there is a true oneness and that division is not real. Division is brought by the Creator to allow us the ability to bring back that unity. So if we could get rid of... So atheism is the belief that nothing unites me. And that is the most tempting and intuitive perspective that we can have. It is contradicted by every moral value and by every life-validating experience. So anybody that gets married, anybody that has a friend, anybody that helps somebody that's sick, anybody that has ever helped somebody will see the fallacy of that extreme concept of what I would like to call atheism. And then there is a pinnacle. Do I think atheism is... So why do I believe that people do not believe in God? I think the reason is because it's God's fault. God created us very specific. We're so unique that we physically exist, but God also made not just our physical bodies, not time and space that they define us, but also our desires, also our my jokes are mine and not yours. My beliefs are mine and not yours. So it's very, very humbling to go past that, to break out of that and say, here's a piece of cake. I wanted to eat it, but you're more hungry. Here's my time. I need my time, but you need it more than me. Here's my smile. It's very humbling to do that. But God did make a world that is, it pushes in that direction. The truth. So the truth will constantly reveal that breaking our barriers, breaking past ourselves, will always be better, be healthier, be happier, will be more meaningful. Societies will build together. They'll fall apart. All these societies fell apart when they were built on themselves.
Uh-huh. And like given that, like I understand that the general answer might be God has made specificity within people. However,
Right.
like I genuinely think there are like two concerns within that like statement.
Yeah.
One being like that's like a super general term, and like although that may be true, um, it wouldn't really answer anything now because like okay, he created us in that way, like what to do now, and like why do you think that there's been a rise? Do you think he's suddenly been engineering more and more people that way? And two, I think to make that like premise that God is making everyone with specificity, you need to believe in God. So like from more of just like a spiritual philosophical point of view, yes, with of course your Jewish and every other piece of knowledge you have to answer it, but like more from like a holistic perspective, why do you think like less and less people are believing in religion altogether, and why is atheism rising? But like kind of explaining it in, I don't know, like societal terms with like an infusion of religion rather than like saying that God made it so.
So okay, I don't think that atheism is growing at all. I'll explain what you mean by the number, why those numbers look that way. But I feel that like all of where science, psychology, philosophy, every meme you ever see on your computer that you like to share, they always point to these messages that I mentioned about unity and caring about others and all the different things that are there for the Creator. There is one challenge that society has faced, and that is that when you have something that's subtle, when you have something that takes depth, you need to get it from someone that you respect. So generally speaking, that's always been parenting, it's always been education. And parenting and education always went together. Either the parents would educate, or they'd bring you to a school that represented their values. This country is the kindest country that has existed in the history of the world, barring, of course, Israel and King Solomon. But this country is incredible in the freedoms and in the freedom of religion, etc., etc. But that kind of kindness opens up to certain things. I will tell you that one of the most painful aspects in this country is that a very small, tiny minority, about 50, 60 years ago, utilized and corrupted the laws of this country because it definitely does not fit with the actual wording of the Constitution or the words and to be able to take full control of education, and they utilized the freedom for each person to have the faith of their ancestors without fear. They used that to take that away from children, to not only illegalize the faith that their parents wanted to share, but they refused even to put a moment of silence for every kid to think what their parents teach them. I think that gap, that tremendous gap between parent and children in education explains this counter-scientific trend where the children are now, even though psychology is recognizing unity, and then you see how, the health of marriages, and you see psychologically how people are, so much less dependent on drugs and suicide and depression and all the other things that, everything scientific is going directly, strongly towards religion. But the pattern of the children, just because you have kids that are being raised and educated in a complete generation gap, and those messages that the parents learn, and even if even let's say, for example, if you guys, right? Imagine if you suddenly become wise to this concept. All of a sudden, I succeed. Hey, my goodness, you believe in everything I say, and you decide you want to raise your kids a certain way. You would be fined, good $5,000 to $15,000 a year per kid if you wanted to raise them with these values. And that is a tremendous. That's where the numbers in the direction of kind of atheistic proclivity or titles that people are using are coming from. But I believe that the world is on a bullet train towards unity, towards seeing meaning and purpose and everything, and it's constantly there, and you see the messages everywhere, and I think it's going to get there regardless, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think that essentially sums that up. So,
Yeah, and you kind of see that the environment's at play, a lot more than you think. I had not thought about it at the perspective I used to. I mean, I before you just think it's kind of an evolutionary almost shift, but that's not the case. Yeah, I guess I thought about it. The first colonizers of America first came for religion, so just being engrossed in that religious environment contributed to such beliefs. So without them, it seems as if the rise in atheism is causal, but it's just correlative, and correlation does not imply causation.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess now moving on to really away from more so the atheistic, theistic side of things and more into, Zionism. So could you maybe tell us what's the difference between Judaism and Israel and Zionism? And that's from David Marvel.
Sure. So really, there's a three-pronged answer, and really the question, I guess most people intuitively, when you hear the question, you're thinking of the state, Israel and the politics and the chat and the strife in the area and all the stresses and the wars. Let's take a step back for a second. Let's just think, because you asked the question, Judaism and Israel. So we're describing, right? If the world did not exist, then it would be everything, right? God makes a world, and then it's fascinating because you see this play out scientifically, how you begin by developing just some basic components, then you develop molecules, and it comes into reality. And the same thing also in people. You have thoughts and ideas, and then emotions, and then emotions become articulated as words, and then words become into actions, and you become more and more physical. So if we thought of God's creation following the pattern of a person, where the person, is the life is in every part of your life, right? But there is there's a center of your life. There is a brain, there is a head, which is not more alive than your toes. Your brain does not have a different level of life than your fingers, or any part of yourself. But it is the focal point. It is the center, right? And the same way so when we say that God creates a world, utilizing the same kind of, the same type of pattern, evolutionary pattern of a person's life coming in and being who we are and what we're experiencing, there's a head to that. And that head would, by the way, exist in time, because that's one of the divisions. It would exist in place, and it would also exist in soul, in ideological, in human divisions. So, for example, in time, we have the day of Yom Kippur. So, if you're familiar with Yom Kippur, it's a day that all of a sudden we achieve forgiveness. What do we achieve forgiveness in a certain time? How does a time have a certain forgiveness? The reason is because there's a focal point where God says, I love the world. I want the world to exist. Everything comes from that focal point, right? In our head, our head is where you're never wrong in your own head, right? In your own head, that's where everything becomes right or wrong.
Well, yeah, I
Decide.
mean, in your own head, it's like that's your ultimate, I guess the best way to say objective subjectivity.
Exactly. And so in your head, that's where everything starts. You judge everything from your head. So Yom Kippur is the head. Yom Kippur is the day that time begins and ends. And so therefore we're forgiven. It's a clean slate on Yom Kippur. In soul, so all people are the same alive. Our souls are the same. There's no person that's more alive than the other. But as a nation, there was a Moses, right? What was Moses' job? Moses was the human experience, the pinnacle of the experience of a human. He led everybody. He elevated everybody. He inspired everybody. And then in every generation there is that person. So there's a person. There is a head of person from where everybody gets inspiration. And by the way, in the Messianic era, there's a certain aspect that we will all have that kind of part of ourselves revealed. So we'll all have that in a certain sense. But there is that head, and then there's a head of space, and that's Israel. And so Israel is fundamental to Judaism from creation. From the beginning, we said the world was created from there. Meaning that the same way that God cares about minutia, and God cares about whether or not I'm eating something that's cyanide or whole grain bread, and that's clear from the way the physics works. And God cares whether I'm eating kosher or not kosher. There's the minutia that God cares about. It has a focal point physically in the world, and that is Israel. And from there, the world, and so therefore, there are 8 billion people in the world, and the center, the focal point of that is Israel. And like it says, this is a land, this is the place where all the nations will come to pray. So it is fundamental to Judaism that Israel must, be a place that reveals the unity of godliness and the light of godliness and the morality of godliness to the world. That is a focal point. Now,
like with
separate from
regards to like religion and like also like more current day, because like back then like it's pretty clear like whose land it was historically. I mean, for example, like when you describe America, like sure you can go back to like the Bering Land Bridge and talk about how people from Asia traveled to America, and those are the Native Americans.
But like with Israel, it's a lot easier to, okay, fine. It was originally the Hebrews, the Israelites, the Jews. And then, you have all these empires, Secludians, Romans, Ottomans, not, of course, not in order, but yeah, so.
So,
like, and how do you think that like relates to like current day, like no longer like
current day, the most important Jewish message that it relates to current day Israel has nothing to do with the focal point of religion or philosophy or anything like that. The most important aspect that results in current, it applies to where you're living in right now. You're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Go back 100 years, 200 years in Florida. Which country are you living in?
The Seminole, well, Spain, technically.
Okay, so if you have a descendant that can prove that they're there and that they belong there, and they could be right, they could be 100% right, but they come and they start, they say we want the land, or they come and they start the most basic requirement that the Torah gives for Jews, for Hispanics, for anybody, not even, it doesn't matter, the non-homogeneous nation that has all different peoples, you have to, you must protect your borders from any type of attacks of any type. Now, so right now, what's happening in Israel is cloaked under religion. It's cloaked under history and strife and all this. That's not what's happening. That's not what's going on. Is that there'll be arguments everywhere, and then there are extremists that are attempting to make their statement through violence, and that is something that cannot be accepted anywhere. It's
Yeah, like disregarding the violence, so like the innate difference between, because like I think like personally with the issue between like Israel and the Jewish people is that I think like violence and history often plays a role in choosing sides or kind of just discussing the issue. but disregarding like the violence. And like I don't mean
Let
to.
me clarify one point here, because maybe I wasn't, because I went like I spoke of Florida, right, or any place. Let's go back to Israel for a second, just to give a little bit more facts, a little more clarity here. Going back, right, 75, 80 years, and like you were saying, there are many different, every single place. I mean, even the Indian tribes here in New York, there were many different tribes that took over each other. They fought wars, whatever it was. That's part of history in any place, in Poland, in Russia, wherever there's wars everywhere. And different, Israel is our homeland spiritually, but take that aside for a second. About 75, 80 years ago, there was a growth of Jewish life, and it had been there. I mean, it had been there for hundreds of years. Jews had never, ever left Israel. We've always had places, and we have. But bottom line is, let's assume for a second, let's just look at this from a very basic perspective. There's a big growth of Judaism there. The English left, and there was a war. Take aside for a second the fact that the data remains and the messages remain, that the message at the time from these armies were, we're going to go and we're going to destroy the Jews, we're going to get rid of them, we're going to kill all of them, they're going to be gone. Let's take that aside for a second. It doesn't matter, right? Let's assume we were wrong. Let's assume we were the violent ones. Okay?
Yeah.
Imagine, we were the violent ones, because we tried to kill everybody, right? And there was a war. And when the dust settled, we were the ones with the policemen, we were the ones with the hospitals, because we won the war. Let's assume it was a violent war for a second, okay? At that point, we became in charge of making sure people in there are safe. It doesn't matter how that happened. So, for example, in Gaza, right? In Gaza, that land that was owned by Jews, that was given away to the Arabs, right or wrong, it is now settled by the nations that are sending rockets into Israel, etc. Right now, if we were to take tanks, and roll them into Gaza, it would be justified and necessary for them to fight us. Doesn't matter why they got it. It would be necessary for them to fight us because we have tanks. We're going in there, correct? Now we might justify. We might say we should fight a war because they're sending rockets.
Yeah, it's self-preservation.
It's morality. We can't argue the Torah's theology without saying that children need to be safe. You can't say, we should pray in the synagogue, but we can't have soldiers at the border. That doesn't work. The first stage of life is to be alive. So again, if one of the Arab nations living in Gaza, neighboring Israel, would ask me as a rabbi, what should I do if the Israelis want to come in? Yeah, so I might say, make a referendum amongst your people. Do they want the Israelis to lead them? Maybe they'll feel safer there. Maybe they'll be wealthier. Maybe they'll have a better life. They'll be more wealth-free. That's a separate question. But that's as a rabbi, if someone said they're rolling tanks into Gaza, I would say, you got to fight them. You cannot. You can.
No, yeah, like I understand, like the self-perseverance point of view. I don't mean to make any like reference to the current situation and violence of that. I was objectively just asking current day, because I feel like Zionism and Judaism are often mistakenly intertwined, and they may be historically, but like I think that's caused a lot of issues because like especially what you're talking about, like the Torah is like almost kind of understood implicit morality. And if they're going to send tanks, obviously you're going to fight back. And I feel like that, just morals and pure ethics is being kind of just colluded with Judaism. And I think like what is I guess what he's asking, that's what I think, but I mean, it's not my question. I guess what he's asking is like, what is the difference of that? Like,
so the political leadership in Israel today, to my understanding, its validity in Judaism is there as a security measure. Its relationship to the Torah, to the extent, if we want to completely describe Zionism as a political state for the moment, it's there. Its validity in the Torah is the fact that they are keeping people safe, and they are lucky to be doing that in a holy place. Now, now that's just being extremely just erasing any. And there's so much meaning. There's a lot of meaning. There's a lot of value. There's a lot of morals within the politics in Israel. So I don't mean to strip it of that. I don't. That's not my intention. But let's just to talk about that part. Then it would be. Let's assume that it's a a country like any other that has the need to that has the need to protect its nation. There is a separate thing that is included in much of the politics in Israel, and it's a very special thing, and you will find it. You'll find the morals and values there, but there's a totally separate thing that is completely separate from political leadership, which is that God's dream is a moral world, and the focal point of that is Israel, and the same way that you have one leader, spiritual leader, so we have one day. There is a place, and that place is the light to the world. And it is our objective, and it is our goal to be able that the political leadership and the physical leadership and everything else should all mirror it. At this point, we're not there. We're not there. But the two of them are. But that being said, just because I at the moment Israel's politics is not 100% the moral lightpost that it can be through the Torah, that doesn't in any way weaken the absolute necessity and validity of them as a country to, be able to be there and stabilize the country. And they
so what would you say is the key difference between Judaism and Israel?
I think that a fundamental part of Judaism is Israel.
I see. I guess that's why you had a trouble
But a fundamental part of Israel is not every single political opinion that is going on now in Israel. So Zionism is Zionism in the Hebrew term, in the term that we've always dreamed, and that God created the world with the plan for there to be a dream, a dwelling place in Israel. It's inseparable. But the exact political stance at the moment is not a reflection of that yet. It's getting. I mean, there's a lot that is. There is a lot. I mean, there's just so much there that really, really is an expression of God's dream. And listen, it happens to be if you want to see unity of all different people, one of the best places in the world to go look for that is in Israel right now. I mean, the reflection of God's dream being expressed through politics, the way of running the country. I mean, if you want, everyone to have the ability to lead and to have a say and to lead their lives and to take care of their family that's right now, that's Israel. So we're getting it.
I see. It's kind of, I guess, that's why, it's just, hard to differentiate because one is really built on the other.
So the simple answer to your question is that Judaism and the politics that are now reflected, the politics of Israel at the moment, are two completely. There is no bridge. There is they are two totally separate things, and the reason for that is that Torah is true, and 99% truth is 100% not true. And so, therefore, until Israeli politics, takes a step back and says, we need God to be the Torah's dream to be articulated, will be humble to whatever it is that God wants, and it is all going to be Torah, then it's two separate things. So Judaism and what is now Israeli politics are not an expression of each other. They just happen to be that there is a lot within Israeli politics that does have the values of the Torah. Plus, the Torah would demand that they protect it, that they be strong and supportive of their country.
Yeah, I guess we went long past expected, but
Yeah.
I really do enjoy the very interesting responses. So we kind of just want to end on. I thought this question was really outstanding. The person who asked the question didn't want to be identified publicly, but essentially the question is, can we legitimately understand the source of the universe? If not, if we can't understand it, why do we just attribute it to a higher power? Why don't we leave it to the unknown? I guess they're just asking to keep it like open ended. Like, what is the point of needing that definite answer? And as I guess, so the following quote is, why don't we continue to make astronomical observations and theories? And I assume by we, talking about like religious people who have already stuck to the belief that God is the supreme creator. And I know you said there were a difference between creator and God, but I don't know.
Hopefully, it'd be the same. I mean, the ideal is for them to do the same thing. That's the creator should be our God. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So like, describing two different things.
God, like,
They could, yeah. Person doesn't believe in a creator, you still have a God somewhere.
Yeah, like why do we just like attribute it basically just to a God and keep it like that rather than try to understand his processes more, or just understand the processes of nature? Why don't we study astronomy to try to figure out the unknown rather than attribute it to just some?
Right. Right. Okay. The answer to the question is, and now this is going to be contrary to what almost everybody will tell you. Okay, it's actually going to sound the opposite of a clear verse in the Torah, right? Moses asks God, "I want to see you," and God says, "You're going to see my back." And God says, "If anybody sees me, they're going to die." Right? Moses asked the question, "How can you have free will?" And still God knows everything. And Moses and Maimonides says like, "Oh, our brains can't understand it." Right? So that seems to be saying we can't understand the Creator. But I am going to say the exact opposite, and I'm going to say we can see vividly the Creator. Now, I'm not disagreeing with them. What I'm saying is we're misunderstanding their answer. Now, how can I say that so confidently? So just both those examples that are very primary examples, like the Torah says clearly, if you see me, you're going to die. But Moses says, "I want to see you." God says, "I'm going to see you. You see my back."
Yeah.
Maimonides says humans can't understand it. So both of those examples, we're clearly missing something if we just read through straight and we just accept that answer. Because God Moses says, "I want to see you," and God says, "You're going to see my back and you're not going to see my front." Isn't that redundant? If you see someone's back, you're not seeing their front, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, by nature of back and front.
Yeah.
Especially because we're talking about it ideologically. We're talking about something like we're talking about an innate concept of the difference of the back of the Creator, meaning we're seeing what the Creator makes versus the actual Creator. So why does God say you're going to see my back and not see my front? Maimonides, the same question.
Back, like basically just like the nature and what he's by back, basically the landscape, which is everything.
Exactly, and you're not going to. So it's redundant. And the same thing also. Maimonides asked a very intellectual question. He says, "How could you believe that you have free choice and at the same time God knows everything?" It's a logical question. He answers, "The human mind can't understand it. If you're going to throw us into a faith furnace, why don't you just articulate it as a faith? Just say everyone has the obligation to believe that there's freedom of choice. Why get into a logical discussion that doesn't have an end if you knew there's not going to be an end?" And so the answer is we're really what they're both saying. Really, Moses told God, "I want to see you," and God said, "Yes, I'll show you a picture." Okay.
And that's
there was a child. You asked me about like taking pictures of the stars and the galaxy, whatever. What is the word? There was a schoolgirl. I want to look up the age. A young girl that came up with a scientific breakthrough that made an incredible advancement in science today. She came up with a way to take a picture of a black hole. You've heard that? You followed that at all? She came up with a way.
I may have heard of something similar.
So what did she do? She says, because science has been trying to prove the concept of a black hole forever, or at least to see, we've proven it many ways, but to be able to actually take a picture of one, and it was impossible. So she said, "Listen, aim the telescopes at the night sky, and what's going to happen is when you pass it long enough, what you'll see is that there are parts that you're not seeing. You will see if you aim at the parts past the black hole. Aim where you think a black hole is, and aim past there. And if there's stuff missing, then you'll know. Even though you can't, you'll know that that's the black hole."
Yeah. So like basically like him showing us the back, the landscape shows us what we can process. But even though like we can't see it all, by seeing the back, there's a front, so therefore you can fill in the missing.
Let me tell you how clearly we could see the Creator, right? Your long-lost cousin comes from the jungles of Peru and comes to visit you here, and you're showing them around the city. and you go past LaGuardia Airport, Fort Lauderdale Airport, okay?
Yeah.
And there's a monstrosity there. We know it as a 747 jumbo jet. They just delivered the very last one ever to be produced. And he says, "What is that? It looks like an apartment building sideways." And you say, "That's called a plane. We use it to fly to New York." And he says, "When you fly, what do? You throw it in the air?" He's like, No. It actually flies." He's like, "It flies? That can't fly. What is it, made of feathers?" He's like, No. It weighs 300 tons. He's like, "How does it fly?" Now, it happens to be that you missed aerodynamics class, right? So you don't know the answer. You don't have the tools to answer the question. In fact, you don't understand the answer. The fact that you're missing the tools to explain it or understand it doesn't mean that you don't see it. You don't know for a fact that it flies. You know that it weighs 300 tons. You know that it actually flies in the air, even though you don't have the tools to see the difference. When we know that there's a creator, when Moses asked God, "God, I want to see you," God said, "You're going to see my back and my face, lo yero." You're going to know my face by knowing where the black hole is missing. You're going to see it. You're going to see it like the plane. The same way you know a plane is going to fly. You could, by the way, Stephen, Oz, you can walk around seeing God around you in everything that you see. Maimonides, he asks this logical question, and he answers. The human mind can comprehend it. That wasn't a cop-out. What he was saying is, we asked the question at the very beginning: if the world didn't exist, would we be nothing, or would we be everything? Yeah. Right? Without existence, you have an undivided, a reality that is not measurable against anything. It's an absolute reality.
Because there's no longer a back, because you are the whole.
Right. So everything that we know of existence, in order for it to even fathom itself, no matter how much you meditate, no matter how spiritual you get, it only begins to be comprehensible by measure and division. That is all of our capacity to be able, that's the tools, that's our aerodynamics class that will help us explain or understand or see or picture the creator. And there's no such picture, because the creator doesn't have those tools. But here's what we do know. If there's no time, right? So there's no beginning or end. Then when does time begin? If let's go back to when time is not measurable, there's nothing dividing, nothing running against each other. Then what happens is, now that there is time, what happened to the non-time? The two can't exist together. You can't have, but we know that it has to be. Without time, without the relativity of time, then there is non-time, and that's where everything is. And by the way, this is not psychobabble that I'm describing here. This is your scientific jumbles. Science will tell us that all of existence is relative to each other, creating the time and framework that we live in, understanding that there is a reality that demand that there are these times and things that need to be there in order for this to exist, and they have to have a beginning of something. There has to be there is something that makes them happen, but that thing doesn't have a beginning, so therefore how could time exist? So when I walk in a world, I could see those two opposites that cannot
mutually,
like Maimonides says, they can't be explained, but they're there. So in other words, the beyond knowledge, the thing that is not time but is time, is in front of us always. Non-time and time are always in front of every time I see something. So we said before, right? I have $1.
It's just
it belongs to me.
Seeing a bunch of dimensions that you can't process. Like for this.
What I'm saying is beyond that. I'm saying that what I could the time that I am processing also is infinite. Right? Where's my $1? This $1 belongs to me. It does not belong to you. Correct?
Yes.
But within, if I were to take away time and space and divisions of identity, then this $1 is part of all of history and part of every iota in existence. It's not separable from it. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that we'll call that the creator. Now we'll call it that the fact that there is something that is defined in a world that underneath it there is no definition. Those two.
Oh, so you have like definition and non-definition at the same time, because when something is defined, like everything that is defined on something that's undefined. So I guess like using that to parallel time, you have time, but time represents a measurement or a measurement of non-time. So therefore, in order for there to be time, or in order for there to be definition, there needs to be non-time and non-definition respectively.
And since those two cannot possibly, in any way that we fathom, coexist, but they do. So therefore, we are living. We are constantly seeing a non-possible existence exist. We are seeing the articulation. We are seeing the miraculous reality of the Creator. The smaller the definition, the more of the Creator we're seeing.
Yeah, I see.
So everything that we see, every moment that we're spending, every thought that we have.
Everything you're seeing, you're not actually seeing, because to see it, it needs to be built on something not seen.
So what I'm saying is that our reality is very real because God makes it so. But even as it's real, it is also complete together and united with everything else. It's not really divided. And the fact that we're experiencing it is the Creator's artistic capacity.
So like basically, like, oh, I see like now what you see by saying like time and non-time. Because if you see the back is only built upon the front. So by seeing the back, by being able to actually see the back, you must see the front. Or otherwise, there would be no back. Like, to recognize time, you need to recognize non-time. To recognize value, you need to recognize non-value. So to recognize a back, you need to recognize the front, and therefore we would be capable of seeing it. And I think like
so anybody that ever told you that you'll never be able to understand God is true. The verse where God says you're not going to see me is true. Maimonides saying you're not going to understand it is true. Everybody who says you can never find God, it's true. But what they're missing is that non-seeing and non-comprehending is just it's just a door.
Yeah, by accepting that you can't see the front, you can see the back. But otherwise, if you I don't know, concede to not being able to see the front, you'll never see the back.
I'm not necessarily following like that exact description like that you just said now, but by virtue of the fact that we realize that our vision of the back is the maximum that reality can absorb, but reality needs the next level. It needs the front. It needs the source that it's coming from, and we know that it's not available. No matter how much you measure the back, no matter how much you measure reality, you're never going to see a non-existence where it comes from.
Yeah.
That. But what's beautiful about that is that, people describe it being in an accident how time goes slowly, right? I don't know if you've ever been in that experience before. But time never goes faster or slower. Every instant of time is absolute. The reason why time goes slower in certain parts of our life is because we become so in tune with each instant as it goes by we hold on to it. But each instant of time is just single. It's absolute. And what I want to, and this point that we've been describing this whole time is that this instant of time, which is absolute, is not individual. It is an absolute moment, which is the articulation of all of the universe in its present mode. So and by the way, all of history and all of the future is experienced by us now in this mode. Me as a person, I'm an individual, but the whole world surrounding me is a broader, a facilitator of my presence at the moment. And all of time and all of space and all of identity, it's all being articulated by this moment that I am experiencing right now, which means that if right now I could smile, if right now I could help somebody, I could do one thing, I'm not doing something small. I am validating the Creator's dream. I'm validating the passion of existence.
So like
the
like
vision
in
that he has.
relation to like finding like theories and like hypotheses relating as strong by basically like by accepting your ability to not understand, you allow yourself to understand. I think
Okay. However,
yeah.
that plane actually flies. In other words, the opposite. Many people would like to, validate religion by saying we can't know. And I would like to argue that if we can't know, then God created absolutely nothing. That's the opposite. God created a world that we're living in.
Uh-huh.
This dollar is real. If I don't give it to the person, they'll be hungry. If I use it, I'll be able to eat. I could buy a coffee. Once upon a time, you buy a coffee with $1. Not anymore. It's real, but the reality that is existing now, the real reality, my understanding of the world, it not only doesn't contradict, but it demands that there is an all-encompassing reality that includes everybody else as part of it.
So like rather like for that apartment flying plane, it's like we don't just leave it up to mystery. We're not like, okay, that flies. We're not unable to know, but rather to like both, because both trains of thoughts, to both understand how it doesn't work, to understand how it works, one, and two, just like understand why God created us and how His impact encourages us to discover these findings, and using that like kind of growth mindset, so to speak, to discover why that apartment plane flies.
Let's give our dollar,
Okay.
or the other coin, whatever it is, to charity. And now the question is, can I imagine that this world that I'm living in right now is created, is being thought of by the Creator? The Creator's thinking, I want people to overcome the diversity. I want people to overcome division, help other people see somebody else's hunger. And when I give this charity, I'm validating God's dream and doing it because God wants it. And that was the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that was a great way to like metaphysically tie everything together in a way. And I think on that deeply philosophical note, I think I would say it's another successful episode.
And like, yeah, I'm putting that extra dollar in. I'm not gonna lie, I do like, I really do enjoy that perspective of like understanding the non to understand the actual.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, or especially me, just think of like the actual physical. It's more concrete, it's more accessible to the mind, and I think that realization will provide, like that'll help me. I'll write that. I have like a realization journal where like I understand something after every journal, and I think that the non and the understanding that like kind of like the unity that God created us and that you were describing. Do you have any like very quick last comments to some of this interview? Like just your thoughts on like the channel and like how everything was.
So listen. My final comment is that really, first of all, we went through a lot of different things. Truthfully, and very often after I have these conversations, someone will come back with a question of one little point. We can speak for an hour about that one little point, right? There's so much there, and honestly, I have the tendency to just go diving into the deep end. So there's a lot of depth, but if we could take away one point, is that God, created a divided physical world, and our job is to be able to each day
And to
do an act
unify
of
it.
kindness,
Each
do an act.
dollar, each act of kindness, and just diving into spirituality itself. Like we're interviewing rabbis, imams, priests, Scientologists, and kind of just using that to, I don't mean to laugh at that, it's just like kind of something out of the ordinary, to unify a very fragmented society, even fragments that are not popular, for example Scientology, which is really cool. And yeah, with that said,
So, L'chaim,
yes,
and it was really going to thank you.
L'chaim.
thank you guys for a wonderful
Thank you.
episode. We'll see you back in episode 7. Like and subscribe. Bye guys.